Hello there. So this is episode 666, and I felt like for such a number it would be appropriate to do something particular. And so I had my ideas of what it was going to be, and they've been completely overridden by something that's come up for me, and it's Jeff Bezos. So Jeff Bezos, or Bezos, I don't know how you pronounce his name, I'm going to call him Jeff. That's the chief executive of Amazon. And he's been in my awareness for the last week or so, and I wasn't really too sure why. And I've had this feeling about Amazon when I was first aware of its existence, that you could buy almost anything just by going online and going to Amazon. There's something inside me that felt like a big no, don't want to do that. I had absolutely no idea why for quite a long time, until Waxara made a friend, and her partner was working for Amazon, and I heard a little bit about it, and then a very good friend of mine started working for Amazon. Interesting thing is they're both doing deliveries, and they both stopped, and that's because of the way they were treated. Working conditions for Amazon employees, I perceive, seems to be appallingly bad, particularly on the delivery side. And then I saw some newspaper headlines this year about the working conditions inside the actual buildings where all the goods are assembled for delivery, and they describe the conditions as being not that much above slave labor. And the one thing that's very clear is appallingly badly paid. So I had this awareness, and I thought, yes, let's do 666 about Jeff, Mr. Amazon. So I started, and I went online and looked a little bit at Wikipedia, and I looked at this and looked at that for YouTube films, and what I discovered is, first of all, world's richest man, apparently. That was a big surprise. I hadn't any idea he was quite that rich. I just knew he was rich, but world's richest man. And as I continue to do my research, he turns out to be an extremely interesting person. He has a very unusual approach to life, and a lot of it sounds really great. Like he has a particular way of approaching his day, which is he goes to bed early, gets up early, and likes to spend from when he gets up, which is early, up until 10 o'clock in the morning, just pottering around doing little things, wash the dishes, give the children their breakfast, read the newspaper, have a coffee, simple little things. In other words, a very gentle start today, and I thought, well, I quite like the sound of that. That sounds pretty good. And he doesn't have any meetings until 10 o'clock in the morning. I thought, oh, that sounds pretty wise. And that's it. Between 10 a.m. and lunchtime, that is his window for his main work of the day. And all important decisions are made then. And this ties in very well indeed with traditional Chinese medicine. And each two-hour section of the 24-hour clock is divided to relevance and influence of particular organ pair, and that time of day Chinese have recognized for thousands of years as a very good productive time. And in an interview I watched, he says, if someone approaches me at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to make a decision, I say, well, tomorrow 10 o'clock. Not even going to entertain the idea now, because he recognizes he's not at his best mentally that time of day. So this just becomes all the more interesting. So this person, that the only thing I knew about him is I didn't like the company. I've made a conscious choice to buy as little as possible from Amazon ever since I knew it exists. I buy so little that when I come to do so, I usually have to go and look up my password. I don't even remember what it is. And don't like the way the workforce is treated. That's really all I knew. But I'm starting to uncover a really unusual, fascinating thing, and the next thing that really surprised me about him is he's got his own space program. So every year he takes $1 billion out of Amazon and puts it into this space program. He's got his own launch pad. He's got his own equivalent of Cape Canaveral, whatever that NASA has in America, in Texas. He's developed his own series of rockets. And it's like, my goodness me, I had absolutely no idea about any of this. And as I carried on digging deeper, what became really clear to me is that he has had a passion since he was a teenager for space exploration. And in fact, he's got visions, and his visions are to create space habitats, eventually space cities. So in other words, you take the very limited concept of a space station, you magnify it out to huge numbers of people living in space, and that's where he sees the future. And I thought, And I was curious about when he was born. And he was born in 1964. Star Trek, it all starts to make sense. So he's from the generation that's grown up with Star Trek and all the subsequent incarnations, the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and then the most recent one, all of that lot. He comes from that generation. So that became even more interesting. And of course the moon landings, he'd have been a little kid when that was happening. So all this stuff is what has fundamentally affected him. But I still come back to this issue about the way he treats his workforce. So earning astronomical amounts of money, I mean, we're talking about hundreds of billions. It's like, it's such a huge number, I can't even begin to get my head around it in terms of actual wealth. And then the company itself is actually in the trillions category, which means it's broken through. There's very few companies have done that on the planet. His gross domestic product, or whatever you call it these days, is equivalent to several countries. It's like, it's all kind of hard to get my head around. But I keep coming back to this thing. Okay, if he's so rich, then he can afford $1 billion a year to create his own space program, his own private space program. Why would he be so stingy with paying his employees? Doesn't make any sense. And then flipping back to the whole Star Trek thing, Amazon is known, apart from Prime and apart from creating the Kindle, the first digital book, the other thing he's created that's significant is Alexa. And Alexa, when I read about him on Wikipedia, he created Alexa because it was his desire to create the Star Trek computer and turn it from science fiction into reality. And there's one particular house I visit, and the people who live in that house, know that house, they've got Alexa. And sometimes if I'm the last to go to bed, I get the honor of walking into the kitchen and speaking to the computer and asking it to switch off the heating and switch off the lighting before I go to bed. And I've got really mixed feelings about that. That is such a strange feeling for me. And it's called 666, that's the name of this one. And so what I realise is Jeff is an exemplar of what I would call the dark side of unbending intent. Now, shamans are known for talking about unbending intent. I do so myself, and it's regarded to be something, this is what we aim at. We aim at developing an ability within ourselves so that we can focus our will on a specific goal and make sure it's delivered. So when we're working for our clients, with their permission always, that's the idea. The client's got an issue, they want help, they ask us for help. We then use our unbending intent to give them the healing that they are asking for and that they are ready for and that they deserve. That's what we do. Always seen it like that. But for episode 666, I'm saying the dark side of unbending intent is what is observed about Jeff's personality. And it seems that the way he comes across is very focused on what his aim is, and his aim is to advance space exploration. That's it. He wants the human race to go out into the stars. And he's clearly influenced by Star Trek, like so many of us, and probably other sci-fi models as well. And that's all fine. I know this is the issue I've got. So what I would say is this: all Amazon's workforce are, whether they realize it or not, they are what I would call ragged-trousered philanthropists, because the amount of money they get paid for the job they do. And let's just take an Amazon delivery driver. It's normal for an Amazon delivery driver to be delivering up to or more than 150 packets a day, which means that person is pushing themselves to an unsustainable degree. In other words, overwork, unsustainable overwork, which is going to result in long-term health issues. Now, that's what I knew from the people I've met and spoken to. But when I did my research, it's like it's even worse, because there are certain states in America where the pay that the employees were receiving was so poor, they were actually eligible for claiming and getting food stamps, which is like benefits. Now, isn't that disgusting that you are working a full-time plus job and you can't even afford to pay for your rent and your food and keep your family alive? You actually have to go on to welfare. That just seems so appalling. And I have had in my awareness throughout this research, why? Well, then I looked at his date of birth. Astrology is such a wonderful and fascinating tool for understanding, because immediately I saw his date of birth, 12th of January 64, January 12th, Capricorn, practical, grounded, ambitious, ambition. Well, yeah, we can clearly see that in this particular instance. 12th of January, when we look at the tarot wheel of the year, we discover this is the Four of Discs, which is power. This person's lifetime issue is power. Well, what I can see that he's done and that he's still doing is he's dedicating his unbending intent to making as much money as he possibly can. And there's a little detail: they don't give the shareholders dividends, it all goes back into the company, which ultimately is increasing the wealth of the company, which increases his wealth, which means he can afford to put $1 billion a year into the space program which he's conducting. So I get all that. But this is the dark side, because at the moment, astrologically, there's a planetoid which is called Chiron, and Chiron is the wounded healer, and it's in Aries. And Chiron in Aries is all about the wounded male. Now, in many ways, Jeff comes across as a very rounded, well-balanced person, but in certain crucial key areas, absolutely not. Now, many journalists have taken him to task about, why do you pay your workforce so badly? In fact, at one point he was eventually shamed into increasing the wages for his workforce in the USA up to $15 an hour from, I dread to think what it was before. That's still very low pay, I would argue, considering how hard these people all work. But my point is, he is known to have a great resistance to wanting to take this on. He does give away millions and millions to charity, but not his own workers. So I'm saying his workers are ragged-trousered philanthropists, because they literally run ragged to do their job in an unsustainable way. And they are really the people that are bankrolling his space exploration program, because he pays them so badly. The money that they should be getting, he's putting into his own personal space race. So that's an example of what I call the dark side of unbending intent. So unbending intent got a clear goal. At first glance, it seems like, well, wonderful, you want to go and create a space program. But is it so wonderful when we have all these problems and all these issues on our own planet, when that money be so much better spent in just giving his workforce living wages so they can live a decent life? Now, here's a bit that this is like the crunch of the whole film, is that in the interview he spoke about something to do with the regrets, and he says that his whole principle of his working life is to always make choices whereby in the long term he doesn't have anything to regret. Now, what happens when a person lets go of their physical body and they go through the process, leaving the physical body behind and entering into the next stage of our miraculous journey? There's a bit of a process which is called karmaloka, and a person gets to experience all that they did in speeded up time in the in-between worlds. And so I foresee that Jeff is going to have this incredibly huge regret when he comes to face what he's not been able to face in his life so far, which is what an incredible karmic burden to have to literally have used the money that should have been going to his workforce to give them decent lives to do something which is basically a vanity project at the end of the day. So that's my take on Jeff and the choices he's making. And I generally don't like to criticize other people, and I can see that in certain aspects he's really well sorted, but I just feel this is such a fundamentally crucial area in terms of morality for someone who's a boss, and because he's the richest boss on the planet, he therefore is the exemplar, he's a role model to whom so many smaller bosses are going to be aspiring towards. And it's like there in the cornerstone of his approach, ripping off the workers. Well, that's all part of the old patriarchal old age that we want to be letting go of. And so I'm looking forward to bosses stepping up who are making it abundantly clear that they do pay their workforce living wages. And in fact, this is my question to you: if you know of any bosses, any employers that are running businesses successfully and they pay their workers a living wage, please will you comment and let me know about it, because it would be good to publicize that side of life. Not all bosses should be evil, that's a fact. And then there's the other thing, and this was a really big red light for me. Some years ago, Jeff was invited to join the Bilderberg group, which has secret meetings in different locations around the planet and is well known to be a group of Illuminati, New World Order individuals. So sounds like part of the global oppression regime. So I'm going to continue to buy as little from Amazon as I possibly can, and that's my question to you really is, can you buy less from Amazon? Can you go more to the direct website, or can you buy more from shops? Because I don't know what it's like in your part of the world. In England, the number of shops closing down, including big chains of stores, it's astronomical. And if things carry on as they are in 5 to 10 years time, we're not going to have any retail outlets in England because they will have gone bust. So that's something else. Do you want to walk into town? Do you like walking into town, having a look at shops? Maybe you might want to think about buying less from Amazon and buying directly from the suppliers, because that's the other thing to point out. All Amazon does is act as a clearinghouse for other businesses. So other people produce the goods or have their goods available. All Amazon does is actually sources those goods and supplies them to you. So thank you for watching. Cheers.